morning mindset is a practice we have in a mastermind, and that practice is designed to give us momentum going into the day. And it is a internal practice, to wake up and to say, to look in the mirror and say, "Man, this is an awesome day. This is an opportunity." And through life, I like to share lessons that either I get from other mastermind members or observe. That's part of the mastermind spirit, is to share the human aspect, the mindset, and one of the topics. I talk to mastermind members, and a big part of mastermind is life happens, and of course, we all like to start the day off winning, but throughout the day when we step outside, we don't have as much control as we think of the market, um, of what happens in life, but we do have a choice and perspective of how we view it. And so, one of the sayings I love is, never let a hard time humble you, meaning that, when things happen outside the normal circumstances, um, and, we're going through some type of struggle or discipline, um, a lot of times through the, the struggle or the hard time, we learn our biggest lessons. And so, I've been talking to, I talk to traders on a daily basis, weekly basis, and one of the things that I observe and I notice about all of us, right, is that life puts us through a test, and the market, it puts us through a test on a daily basis. Every day that we trade, we have to pass another test. Life in general, we're gonna go through our ups and downs, and we're gonna have to pass tests. Um, and you know, that's just a responsibility that we have in life, right? We will always get our beliefs will always get tested, our discipline, our our patience. We're constantly, leveling up in this game of life. And so I like to say that trading is it's a lifestyle, right? Because it doesn't stop when the market ends, right? We are continuously making trades and negotiating with, day to day, every day. And so, one of the things that, um, you know, we develop some type of edge in life. We develop the skills, and in trading, you know, every trader hits, uh, a successful run. Right, you go through a period of time where you're having a lot of success, you feel really good, and then um, you start skipping small steps, and overconfidence is something that happens when you are you know um, on a upswing, and you are doing really well. You start taking small little shortcuts here and there, and um, you know the discipline and the patience that gets you to a level of success could also be as big as Achilles, um, out of the blue, and it humbles you real quick. And so, I was talking to, a trader this weekend, and it wasn't, I say that anytime you go through ups and downs, or you have, a loss out of the blue, it's going to teach you a lesson. It's going to give you feedback, right? And it's going to allow you to experience just a little bit of discomfort, right? And that discomfort is there to reveal patterns, dangerous patterns that's forming, right? And you want to be, you want just like going to the doctor, you want to be alerted to issues before they get really big, right? And I call that being caught in time, right? Anything that you can recover from, is caught in time, right? It's just that, I know cancer and being stage 4, or being told that, hey, it's too late, right? I think everybody would prefer to be alerted and take a test and say, hey, you know what, you have some numbers is off, and we can help. And that is with, mistakes in the market. That's with, little obstacles in life, right? You want to be able to recover from them, and you want things to be caught early. So I look at it as a beneficial test that is throwing a flag, right? And so when you go through challenges and you find and a test throws you a flag, right? Instead of looking at it like, man, why is this happening? Or, I messed up. You saying that, hey man, I caught this a little bit early. Right? I caught it before it could do some real damage. And right, you can learn things at a low cost, right? And that positions you for much larger wins. So that is a mindset that, you know, um, small mistakes, right? The overconfidence, that was my actually, response is that, hey, you know, this is actually beneficial, right? You start getting overconfident and you got caught by a day or two. Now you can actually recover and keep doing the things that you're doing for the last 3 months, 4 months, right? All the processes got you to the point of success, and it's going to be that much better. So, when you go through a struggle or you have struggling times, right? Do you have the courage to receive the lesson, right? And once you acknowledge that, oh yeah, man, this is actually good. It throws a red flag. I was getting undisciplined. I was skipping the checklist. All I have to do is go back to what I was doing, right? And this wouldn't happen. And so, of course, when there's a hard time in trading or in life, or uh, your account is going down, you have less money, bills are stacking up, and the wins haven't arrived, right? And everything starts to feel heavy, right? Your mind could start to spiral, but your energy and what you attract are directly correlated to how you feel and how you see yourself and how you show up. So even when a situation is tough, right, your energy and what you attract is correlated to how you see yourself and how you show up, right? And if you had a hard time convince you that you're lesser, that you're defeated, that you're not worthy, right? I see traders that say, "Oh man, I just can't do it. You know, it's too much. I don't have enough time. I don't have this." Right? They let a hard time in a difficult situation make them feel defeated and unworthy, right? And then they show up in that way, and a lot of times, it makes it impossible to think clearly, right? To plan strategically, right, and take bold action that required to step up, right? Sometimes it just takes the right action to change the situation, right? And this doesn't mean that we deny that it's difficult, right? You're not denying difficulty. You are just refusing to let the difficulty diminish your identity and your inner peace, right? And that's the whole saying, never let a hard time humble you. It's like, I'm not gonna let the moment, the challenge, the difficulty, change and make me feel lesser. I'm gonna use that as a qualified lesson, right? And a slip up of being undisciplined or having lack of patience, right? A one moment event after being consistent for 2, 3, 4, 5 months, right? It just shows that you had a human moment, right? But you still can call yourself a disciplined trader even after being undisciplined in one moment, right? And you have overcame before, and you had a process that worked, and you know that the strategy and you've made money and it works, and you just have to continuously follow it. So your energy flows where the mind goes, right? If you say that it's too overwhelming, if it's too, challenging, it is. And if you say that, man, I just have to fix this one mistake or this mistake that I made, then it also energy flows there as well. That this is not a big problem; it is a small fix right? So some people look at the trading mistakes as a big problem. Others look at it as a small fix, right? In hard times, you know, they can teach, right? Every season builds habits and confidence, right? And for me, I like to say I got in the habit of expecting to overcome a challenge, right? If I get in the habit of um, overcoming, right, and getting over the hump, right. So any challenge that comes up, it's like, man, how am I going to beat this? How am I going to get over the hump, right? And so the hard season reveals character and forged capacity, right? Struggle removes the luxury of illusion, right? When you go through the struggle, it removes the luxury of illusion. A lot of people like to live in a fantasy world where, it's always going to go right. But then when it goes wrong, they see um, the worst. And being uncomfortable teaches you what comfort can't, right? Being comfortable too long, right? It it you know removes the ability to overcome the obstacles. So you almost have to have it to remind you that in this test, even when it gets hard, I still can pass it, right? And so hard times do teach us things, right? Hard times teaches discipline under pressure, right? You can't manufacture discipline under pressure unless you perform, right? Unless you had that struggle to say, hey, how do I stay disciplined under pressure, right? Because a lot of people can follow the rules when conditions are favorable, right? They can do everything right when all the conditions are aligned. Only struggle reveals whether your discipline is real or merely conditioned on feeling good. So, it's it's like it's easy to pass up a meal or not have anything when you're already full. But when you're hungry and you have to make a choice, like, hey, should I eat this or not? And it's not good for you, right? Is when you had that hunger is when you say, hey, here's when I'm really disciplined. I'm not eating that, right? And self-awareness at the edge, right? Overconfidence, fear-based decisions, revenge trading, subtle avoidance. They all have surface. They all surface when things are hard, right? You finally see patterns with clarity. Um, when things get uncomfortable, right? The resourcefulness and leverage thinking. When capital, time, and energy are constrained, creativity explodes, right? So when things get dim and things get challenging, that's when you create the most, right? That's when your mind as a human gets most resourceful, right? You start, creating solutions that you wouldn't have ever thought about when everything was easy and comfortable, right? And that's why we have so many great inventions that came from, you know, um, you can say slavery as well. When it was time to create things to make life easier or come up with solutions, right? A lot of times the most beautiful ideas come up when, you know, it is it's pressure, right? And so that's what a hard time will teach you is that you become self-aware during those times, right? You are able to test your discipline, your patience, all these qualities, right? And then resourcefulness and leverage thinking. Can you leverage the people around you, right? And this gives you a perspective and radical growth. You always grow the most during the most challenging times, right? Small wins and steady progress become profoundly meaningful once you tasted a setback, right? We appreciate the base hits. We appreciate, after a loss that, hey, we can get it back or we can make the right decision, right? That actually forges a lot of times, a trader's confidence after they've taken a loss and they've gotten it back through, their strategy or their process, right? And so going through things that only fire can teach, right? Um, and that a lot of times comes through the death of your preservant. Damn, I can't say it. Perseverance, right? You don't know how deep your well goes until you have drawn from it repeatedly. Until you like test it, right? You know yourself in a fire. Until you've had the pressure, right? You don't really know how resourceful you really can get. You really don't know how creative you really can get. So, um, the process of the cost of breaking your own rules is felt, when and recognize when it actually costs you something, right? When it actually you see a count go down, you know that hey, I broke these rules, or I did this, or hey, I need to learn more, right? It's teaching you what you need to know, and unshakable self belief, right? When everything around you, external, right, it's telling you should feel small or you should feel ashamed. Have you ready to quit, right? Do you believe in yourself or do you quit, right? Do you believe the stories that the results are telling you, right? It's at a time it comes to a crossroad that hey, I'm gonna make this work, or a person gives up on themselves, right? And I think the self belief will not allow you to give up on yourself. If you really believe deep down that hey, I'm gonna master this at one point, right? And then I talk about negative energy or anger, but how to harvest pain into power instead of poison, right? Pain and anger could destroy you and poison you and silently kill you, or it turns into wisdom, all right, and instead of bitterness and victimhood, right? The lessons I learned, helps me become better, and it says, hey, I learned this lesson, and I have more wisdom. I know that I need to keep using checklists, no matter how good I get, no matter how much money, I prove that I can make, right? I gotta still do this checklist. Still got to journal. I still can't, you know, I gotta respect the market. And I gotta respect life, and I know I could, I know it's possible if I lose again. But if I put these rules, I put this procedure in place, I just gotta stick to it, right? And right, sometimes someone throwing dirt over you is you can consider it being planted, right? They plant the seed that is gonna help me grow. Now that I'm being buried by all this pressure, right? And so, the pressure that feels like crushing you is often the exact force required to crack the old shell, right? It's almost the ability to break through, to crack, right? So all the pressure that you may face, it also, is the same pressure that allows you to break through and start to sprout and start to grow. So, the insight earned through the struggle is not the insight, when you read a book, right? The insight earned through the struggle is visceral, right? Yeah, that's the inside of the body. That is the inner truth, right? And it's that experience, right, creates the wisdom to overcome in the future, right? And this is one of the reasons why traders still use good discipline, why traders um, had the patience, develop like, hey, I'm not going to sell after a certain period of time, or, I'm going to give it some more time, right? It's these lessons that you learn, right, when you realize that, oh man, I've gotten wisdom through experience, right? There's only certain things you can read through a book and you can do a video, but when you live through certain things, right, and a lot of times it is, you know, um, a hard time, right, or a profound failure, intense struggle, that is when the transformation comes. That's when it's deeply ingrained into you, right? That's when it fundamentally alters the behavior and perspective, right? And so those are different insight types. You have one is the oracle, right, where it's just books and lectures and observation. You have one that's experience, right? You just go through trial and error, right? And then you have one that's a crucible, right? It's a crucial period of time, right? And it is going through the hard time, right? In the military, in the Marines, right, we had a regular boot camp, right? And that's kind of the experiment, and you learn the how everything works. But then you have a crucible week, right? And it's a hell week. It is a time that's manufactured to put you through a hard time, profound failure, right? To make you want to give up and quit. But then that's when a Marine starts to learn, right? That self-confidence that I can do anything, right? You had to go through that hard time to actually believe that you can do it because you did it, right? And traders, they experience that, right? They experience the ups and downs, right? And that becomes a crucible insight, right? That not a textbook can teach them, not reading through a video or watching a video, right? It You have to pay for it, in real life, right? The threat of loss, the threat of account going, the drawdown, right? And after you survive the drawdown, or if recovered from a loss, right? Then it's often preceded that you'll have a greater insight and you have your biggest wins, right? And so, planted not buried, right? The struggle is the setup, right? Um, right. The seed does not get germinated, right? Sitting on a shelf or sitting in some light, right? It has to be taken from safety, and then it has to be buried in a dark soul, and covered completely in dirt and left in a hard, confined, seemingly lifeless place. And out of that place comes the seed that sprouts, right? Only then does it crack, the shell crack. Only then does life inside begin to push upward against resistance, right? Towards the sun it cannot see yet, right? That's what it feels like being buried is often being planted, right? You get seeds of um, perseverance uh, put into you, right? And this is something that is required, right? It is required to win, right? The drawdowns, the slow periods, between wins, the unexpected obstacles, the moments you question everything, right? These are not signs you're off path or being punished. They are the exact conditions required for the next level of your potential. So, the Marine analogy is a great, boot camp is hard, but there's a crucible week where it's even harder, right? But we all know that hardness is the last steps before becoming a Marine. You have to go through it, right? And it has to manufacture the toughness because there's no substitute for war. So, and there's no substitute for winning, right? There's no substitutes for being at a high level because you're going to have to develop that the resiliency at some point. You got to resilient. You have to, to be a good trader. You're going to have these lessons, right? And that's the hard part of trading is that some people just want it to be comfortable and they don't want to have any lessons. They don't want to go through a crucible period of time. Right? Same thing with life, right? A lot of people give up anytime it gets hard. And it's like, well, how do you win? How do you deserve to win at the top if you haven't experienced, right? New York Knicks, 70 what is it, 50 something years. And, the lessons, it feels appreciative, but it took a long time. And they know it's not a common experience. Winning a championship on any level is not, it doesn't become standard, right? Until the preservation, until you had those losing streaks. And then you know how rare it is, how special it is to be at the top, right? And so when it comes to having greater responsibility, right, and having heavy influence, right, um, the prison, the pain, it forges the palace, right? So a lot of times when you get to the top, you deserve to be there, right? Because you had so many lessons that you had to get through that felt like chains. But when you anchor down and you're preparing for what you've been asking for, a person says, "Hey, I want to be a successful trader. I want to make all this money. I want it to be easy in life." Well, what are you willing to go through, right? You just don't get there because I said I wanted to get there. It's like I have to endure the ups and downs, right? And so we see a person holding a championship, but a lot of times you didn't see the entire struggle of the entire season, right? You didn't see that the Knicks had to come back. They were down 28 points to 29 points in a game and had to come back and win it, right? It wasn't like they just walked through and won, right? They had to overcome some big obstacles. So the best path is not always the easiest, right? We naturally pray for the storm to be removed, for the easy paths, the quick resolution, right? But even in you know um, biblical stories, right, or philosophical stories, right? The promise is never that you'll be spared the valley, that you'll never have to walk through anything, right? The only promise is that you'll be guided through it, that you'll get through it, that you can actually make it, right? And that is the power that leads to green pastures, right? Hard is not the preferred method, but it's sometimes the necessary method for developing real quality, depth, and capacity, right? Those seasons produce the people capable of handling bigger wins. And it's almost the hard ones, right? So you don't run from a hard time, you grow from it. And that is a, um, main aspect of this call, right? The market is going to be ruthless. It is not a fair teacher, right? Uh, you will win in certain aspects, but when you become sloppy and you develop bad habits and you have overconfidence, right, you will have to pay the tuition at some point. And this is the trader who learns to discipline during the small drawdown saves himself from account altering lessons later. So you always run your checklist. You always, even when you don't feel like it or you don't feel like you need to, especially when your confidence gets higher, right? The rules and process exist before the moment, right? Before your mind tells you this time is different, right? So the best traders are not the ones who never struggle. They're the ones who struggle, extract the lessons quickly and completely integrated into their identity and return to the arena more dangerous and disciplined than before, right? You return and you show up with those lessons. And this is part of the mastermind. Is like, I'm not being buried, I'm being planted. And I'm being shown these lessons. So, uh, you know, the struggle is not the end of the story. It's a force that makes the end of it possible, right? The biggest wins are waiting on the other side of the lessons you learning right now. And so in life, that's the mentality is that everything is a lesson, and you never been buried. You always been planted, and these seeds are planted so you can actually grow from them. All right. And on that note, I want to appreciate all you guys for hopping on. Uh, no matter what you're going through, people go through a lot in the summer, family, money, relationships, health, right? And you're going to learn from those and you're going to sprout, right? You're actually going to come out better because nobody has gotten to the top without going through it. All right. On that note, I want to give you guys your morning back. We are winning. I wake up winning every day, no matter what's going on outside. And you do too. All right. You still standing, and I appreciate you guys. And let's continue to push through. All right, later on.